I took the 4-star position in May of 2019. Less than a year later, we had a world-changing, worldwide pandemic that basically shut the entire world down. We normally do around 4,000, 4,100 jobs a day in a 24-hour period. We hit over 6,500. We had a moment where a plane was in a Hudson and people were standing on the wings, like not something you see every day, but definitely reminds you that there is good in the world. What we handle on this type of profession is the worst of the worst. Like, we would have to be made of stone to not have emotion. I think emotion is what brought us here. I'm Lillian Bonsignore, retired Chief of EMS Operations for FDNY in New York City. And today is the day we all come together to remember. And as we promised, we will never forget. Today is a day that we honor so many heroes, so many people who gave up their own lives to save the lives of others. Please join me in a moment of silence to remember these incredible people. Thank you. Never forget.
Welcome to another episode of Respond to Resilience. Today we have the distinct honor of welcoming Lillian Bonsignore. She's the retired Chief of EMS Operations for FDNY. And with decades of invaluable experiences in one of the most demanding emergency services in the world, Chief Bonsignore will share her profound insights on leadership and mentoring, highlighting a story of impact and influence that has shaped her successful career. We invite you to like and subscribe: YouTube, Respond to Resilience; Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and Responder TV. We're on LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and check out our website, respondertv.com, for past episodes and guest information. We'll be right back to speak with Chief Bonsignore after this.
In this family, more of us die by our own hands than by the hazards of the job.
In this family, up to a quarter of 911 telecommunicators have symptoms of post-traumatic stress.
In this family, our mental health and wellness are in crisis,
while responders are quietly suffering.
In this family, many struggle with job-related stress,
burnout, trauma, sleep disruptions, substance abuse,
and relationship problems.
In this family, we can help the helpers.
with vital information and resources,
resilient strategies,
and success stories of overcoming the obstacles.
In this family, no one is alone.
Welcome to Respond to Resilience with co-hosts retired Lieutenant David Dashinger, Dr. Stacy Raymond, and Bonnie Wimley, LCSW EMTB.
Yeah, we're very happy to welcome Chief Lillian Bonsignore, paramedic, CIC, and she's a retired 31-year veteran of the Fire Department of New York. She served as FDNY Chief of EMS Operations from 2019 to 2022 during the COVID pandemic, and she was the highest-ranking officer in EMS Command, the highest-ranking uniformed female in FDNY, and the first female to achieve a 4-star rank in the history of FDNY. Chief Bonsignore was responsible for the operational oversight and leadership of more than 4,300 EMS providers in New York City, where EMS responds to 1.5 million calls per year. She previously served as FDNY Chief of the EMS Academy, where she was responsible for EMS probationary school, EMS officer training, and she managed the EMS certification of more than 13,000 members of the FDNY. Chief Bonsignore retired in December 2022, and she's now a senior advisor for Cambridge Consulting Group. Chief, warm welcome to Respond to Resilience.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's going to be exciting.
Definitely.
Chief, we've been really excited about this. And as David was reading your intro, you just are an amazing person. And I can't wait for our guests to listen to all the wonderful things you have to say to us. And thank you for your service, especially during such a dark time in our culture. We really appreciate everything you did.
Oh, thank you so much. It was absolutely my pleasure. It's been a long and wonderful career, and I've met so many great people, and I just feel very fortunate to have had the career that I've had. So my pleasure, every minute of it.
Yeah. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to hear your story. So would you tell us, how did you get into EMS? How did this 30-year journey start for you?
Yeah, it started actually quite accidental. It's kind of a weird story. I'll tell you a little bit about where I come from, because I think some of your listeners might connect to some of the things I'm talking about. First, you might have picked up I have a Bronx accent, so I was I was born and raised in the Bronx, and my mom. There was four kids. I was the oldest of the four, 2 boys, 2 girls. My mom struggled along the way. We didn't have a lot growing up, and she struggled. She actually got into a relationship with my stepfather, who one of my brothers and sister come from, and he was extremely abusive. So we grew up in a situation where domestic violence was the norm, in our house, particularly for my mother, not so much for the kids, but as you know, trauma, is trauma, and that's your formative years, right? That's where you're growing up and you're seeing what life is supposed to be and how men and women are supposed to treat each other, and what humanity looks like, and it was a tough time. It was a really tough time, and I didn't have a whole lot of mentoring or guidance from my mom, because she was basically trying to survive, and at some point when we were young, we left. I say we because she packed up the 4 kids and got the strength to leave this relationship, and back in those days it was not an easy thing to do. There wasn't a lot of support for women who had nowhere to go, or were with an abusive man. In fact, I remember very clearly the cops coming to the house at one point, because she had just been abused by my stepfather, and the cop, kind of like, well, you chose this, so you're on your own, and left. So that's the type of situation I was in. And when we talk about the things I've been able to accomplish, it's important that you know that this is where I started. There was nothing in my upbringing to that point that set me up for the success that I found throughout my life. So what actually ended up happening is I was very much an overachiever as I was growing up. Even throughout this, I found that school was a place that I can be myself, and nobody knew what was happening in my house. So, nobody knew that the lights weren't on. Nobody knew that we didn't have dinner that night. Nobody knew. I could just be whoever I was. And along the way, I met an educator, and I was about 14 years old, and she worked in my school district, and she developed educational programs for kids. Mm-hmm. At that time, I also had a pediatrician who, was my regular doctor. They are both much older than they were when we met. Let's just put it that way. But so am I, right? So, they mentored me throughout my life, and I just never understood how 2 strangers with nothing, no skin in the game. They got nothing out of it. In fact, they probably got more drama than they needed, because coming from where I came from, my decisions weren't always top of the line. I was a kid growing up in a tough place, and I was trying to navigate life. And, we all make our choices and mistakes. And, some of the things you think mistake turns out to be some of the greatest things that ever happened. However, they were there with me the whole time. So, when I was about 17 years old, I was really needing to get out of my house. I was really needing to just kind of figure out how I was going to get out and go to college, because it did not look like it was going to be an option for me. Mm-hmm. And I did what every smart young girl did. I got married at 17, and I had a baby at 18. So now, though that was the greatest thing that ever happened, in the long run, I just created more obstacles than the obstacles I had. So now I had a young baby. I had to, work and figure things out. And these 2 women were right by my side. And at some point, the doctor says, enough's enough. because I always told her I wanted to be a doctor. That was my path. I was just very interested in medicine, wanted to be a doctor. So she says, enough's enough. You're going to EMT school. Like, we need to get you into medicine. Go to EMT school, and then we'll figure out how you're going to go to college and go pre-med. And I'm like, I don't really know what EMT is, but I trust you, right? Like, okay. So she says, I'll pay for the school if you can't afford it. My doctor. I mean, she's literally still my doctor, right? So, because I'm still a kid, right? She's still a pediatrician. So she says, I'll pay for it if you need me to. And I figured out how to pay for it. But I went to St. Vincent School of Nursing down in the city, and I took an EMT class, and I absolutely loved it. It was so amazing. I loved it. So I'm like, okay, I finished EMT school. Now I got to figure out what this means. And I got a job in a private ambulance company for a while. And I applied for the city. At that time, the city was not part of the fire department. It was New York City EMS. And they worked for health and hospitals. So, I got hired there. And the thought was I would stay there for a summer or two and then, find my way to school, which is where I really wanted to go. And I got hired by the city, and it was like a match made in heaven. So, it turned out being a 31-year-old, 31-year summer job for me because, once I got there, there was no pulling me away. I absolutely loved everything about this profession. And it wasn't the money. I'll tell you that because, as you know, EMS is not at the highest level of like pay when it comes to first responders. But I just fell in love with it. So, I end up staying there for 31 years and finding my way through the ranks and, becoming an instructor, which again, I just loved. It was part of almost the favorite part of my job is being in the classroom and just watching people learn and connect and, seeing kids like me that didn't have a chance. I just didn't have a chance. Like statistics will tell you that I should not have ended up where I ended up. But because of the mentoring of two complete strangers, I mean, strangers in the sense that, they had no obligation to me. There was no family connection. But they took a hold and they never let go of me. And as crazy as I got at times growing up, they were right by my side, the two of them. And they didn't know each other. which is interesting. So, I learned education from Naomi, which was the educator, and I learned medicine from Stacy, who is the doctor. And I end up becoming a paramedic instructor, and so I took a little of each of them and just kind of, figured out what I could do. So
that is so great and beautiful gift that they've given to you. Yeah.
They changed my life. They sure did.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kristen Weldon. I am the president and founder of the Fire Service Psychology Association, which was established in 2017. This year, we are hosting our 7th annual conference in beautiful Washington, D.C. It will be hosted by the D.C. Fire and EMS Department, as well as the D.C. Fire and EMS Foundation. This will be an exciting opportunity to bring fire service leaders, researchers, psychologists, and mental health professionals from all around the world to come together to help define the discipline of fire service psychology. There will be a gala on the night of the 3rd, as well as a clinician cultural competency training program on October 2nd and October 5th. We'd like you to join us for this exciting event. Please check out our website at www.firepsychology.org to learn more details. I look forward to seeing you guys in October. Take care.
And thank you for sharing that part of your story. And you mentioned how much you love training. I'm curious, what else did you love about EMS that kept you, coming back for 31 years? And at the same time, what were some of the challenges you faced as you worked your way through the ranks of EMS?
Yeah. I think what I loved the most about it was the service aspect, just the service aspect and being surrounded by people who felt the same way. Like I felt like that was my family. I always felt that instant connection to the people sitting across from me, and especially as I started to move up the ranks and and I see where they're sitting, and I could feel what it felt like to be in that seat and know where I ended up and know the experience that I've had along the way. But, the fact that we have an entire group of people who are willing to dedicate their lives to the betterment of others and to show up at humanity's worst moments without thanks, leave their own families many times to do this, yes, and then come back the next day. Like, there is nothing more extraordinary than that. And I was just so honored along the way to be a part of a group like that, and I still deeply, deeply believe in service and that, we should be helping each other and mentoring each other and trying to lift each other up and, not get caught up on the negativity and the things we see like on social media and the hate and the, people just criticizing each other. There's so much more to life. And, we saw it multiple times. I was a 9/11 rescuer as well. Mm-hmm. And during COVID, like, people come together when things really matter. And to see the first responders out there and how EMS performed during the worst situations that I have personally witnessed in my career is just amazing. Like, how could you not want to be part of that group?
Yeah, it's like the best of humanity coming out, right?
Yeah. And you asked David about some challenges. I'll just say quickly that, this job does not come without challenges. Mm-hmm. The higher you go in rank, the more challenges there are. At some point when you start to move up the ranks, and you guys could probably, throw a little comment in here about that. But you have to, you almost switch in the eyes of the people that, you adore so greatly, now you become them instead of us. Right. And, when that happens, and it shouldn't happen, I don't think it should happen, but it does. That's just reality. When that happens, it can create more challenges than are really necessary.
What I was going to say is I thought a lot about this as a therapist, and I have a lot of parallels with you with childhood and how I got into EMS and what it provided for me back then. And one of the most striking things about what you said and what I have felt as well is that you meet this group of people who know what it's like to be you. Even though there are different circumstances, you meet people that have faced adversity, which led them to EMS largely for the most part. And they want to be there in someone's darkest hour because no one was there for us.
Right.
And there's something really healing about providing that kind of a service for other people, whether it's volunteer or paid. So I think what you're describing is giving back a lot that you received from these two wonderful women who saw your potential, saw your resilience, and wanted to help you excel and be the person you could be. And that's one of the most beautiful things about EMS that people don't understand or they don't see. So
yeah, I really agree with that. Yeah.
I think there's so much negativity. You mentioned it before, but there's so much good that I wish we could shine the light on. And that's what we try to do here, right? We try to do that with our guests. But, I want to know specifically, what was it like to be the first 4-star chief at the department who's a female? Because I would imagine that had its own challenges.
Yeah, I think, just being a female moving up ranks in a male-oriented profession has inherent challenges, right?
Yes.
But I can say that I did okay. Like, the folks around me embraced me. There weren't, I don't think there were extra challenges because I was a woman. I mean, there may have been those moments, where we're sitting around a table with all the top level people, and they say, the brothers, and then they look at me and they go, and you, and the sisters, so I think what I brought to the table was a voice for women and for women to be recognized on the same level as the other first responders. And I don't think that there was any negative feelings around that. Like, I don't think the folks who had made their way up the ranks when it was primarily all male would do anything intentional to try to hurt my feelings. I think it was habit. It was changing language, changing, and I'm not the word police. I am the furthest from the word police, but they may say, excuse me, sir. I mean, look at me, right? Like, I don't stick out as, oh, there's the female. When we're in uniform, I kind of blend a little bit more than most. So I would have somebody say, oh, excuse me, sir. And I would say, excuse me, ma'am. And they would just stop and look at me like, I'm not a ma'am. And I would say, I'm not a sir. But I think the challenge that really was more underlying than evident was that I had to work that much harder. I had to be that much better. I had to make less mistakes. I had to not be as emotional. I had, there were these built-in things that people expected. And I think what I found is that some of the guys get a bad rap, like some of the guys were way more emotional than I was. They were just as feeling as everybody else around me. But I'm not going to lie, some of the things that we faced, and I had to face as leading the nation's largest EMS, was very difficult. And I found it to be very difficult. And I found myself, needing to let the emotion out. Not that it made me weak, just that I needed to unload it so that there was room for the next thing, and as we started to move forward together, the people around me, primarily men, but the people around me started to become more comfortable with talking about what it was that was bothering us. I was able to be myself around them and not feel like, they were going to gun for me because I showed a little emotion or, I was upset about a certain thing. I mean, I was, not a cry, I wasn't crying all over the place, but we deal with what we handle on this type of profession is the worst of the worst. Like we would have to be made of stone to not have emotion. I think emotion is what brought us here, right? Mm-hmm. Emotion and feelings that you want to help somebody and, be there for somebody at their worst moment doesn't mean that worst moment doesn't impact you. So I think as far as being a female moving up this rank, that's what I experienced, that it took a little bit of extra, work on my behalf to be recognized as somebody who was serious and qualified and, competent and able to lead the masses. And it took a little bit more work on their end to say, emotion doesn't make us weak. We can do this together and still be successful. So I learned a lot, and I think they certainly did as well.
At the core of every community beats the heart of the first responders, ever present on the front line, making the impossible look routine. Through the relentless pressure and the unseen scars, our frontline warriors silently battle the stress of the job. It's crucial they armor up mentally and emotionally, not just for the community they safeguard, but for the families they return to. Supporting the wellness and mental health of first responders is priority number one. By championing their well-being, we're ensuring they're unstoppable, both in the line of duty and in life. Step up for the Titans who protect us. Because when they're firing on all cylinders, they're not just first responders, they're game changers. Join us. Visit ResponderTV.com to be the difference.
Something we probably need to see more of in leadership is that vulnerability and willingness to show that we are human beings, right? We're not made of stone. We're not, impervious to emotions and to being impacted by the things that we see out there. So that's really powerful to hear. I kind of wanted to move a little bit into how this impacted your life outside of the fire department. Now you've put in 31 years. You were probably incredibly busy doing all the things with training, administration, particularly during COVID. So how did that impact your family and friends? And did that change once you got into the retirement phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough. When we serve in these capacities, whether it's as an EMT or a certified first responder or the chief of EMS, it really doesn't matter where you fall in that spectrum. When we serve in these capacities, our families and friends serve too.
Yeah.
They serve too. Every moment you walk out the door, they're scared that you're not going to come back. And we've seen examples of this, right? Like every moment that you leave, they're afraid. Every emergency that happens in the city, you leave them to fend for themselves so that you can help strangers. Yep. Every holiday that's planned, you are working. So, we have to move Thanksgiving to Tuesday, and everybody else has to adjust because you're not available on that particular day. And quite honestly, first responders have the highest level of, divorce and alcohol abuse, substance abuse, depression, suicides. Like there are so many things that families have to contend with when it comes to loving a first responder. Mm-hmm. So, I would say my family was greatly impacted, as well as my kids. I mean, I went to 9/11. I responded to 9/11 and didn't come home for a couple of days. And back then, we didn't have cell phones to, just pick it up and call home. I think there were Nextels or something were, floating around and starting at that point. Yeah. But down there, the antenna, the cell tower had come down with the buildings. There was no communication. So, my daughter who I had when I was 18, so she's been, the joy of my life, growing up, because we grew up basically together. She was in high school at that moment, and it sparked her to join the fire department. And one of the things she said was, "Mom, you're never going to be alone again if this happens. I'll be right there with you." She ultimately ended up leaving the fire department and becoming a nurse in the end, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. But, it sparked a lot of people, especially my family. Now, how does this apply to retirement? Well, I am in eternal payback mode right now. So I have been so fortunate to be able to actually retire from this amazing career, still, healthy and happy. And now I am in complete service mode to my family, which is why I, sometimes get the cootie bug from the kids, but I do, I do the pick this one up and go drop it off there and cook dinner and, now serve my family. And I am in awe of the job that they do. And I'm so grateful to be able to do. I will serve them in any way they need me to serve them. I mean, I'm not the easiest person in the world, but certainly I will give anything that they need. That's my job right now. So nothing comes before that. I will reschedule. I will, change things around. I will make sure that, the kids are going where they need to go. And my wife has what she needs because she's currently the sugar mama. She's the only one with a job right now. So I'm retired. So, make sure that all my family is taken care of. And, the one thing that I did learn is that, throughout 31 years of the worst of humanity came the best of humanity, seeing the service and the love that people give to each other, just the willingness to sacrifice their own well-being to take care of somebody else. That, we have two very, very serious magic powers that sometimes we don't recognize, and that's impact and influence. And you impact people all the time. You influence them in either really wonderful ways or not, right? But you don't even need to be a part of this. Like, this happens naturally without your knowledge. So, it's important to remember who you are and how you are viewed by the people around you and behave accordingly all the time, because you are impacting somebody and influencing others every moment of your day, which you guys are doing wonderful with this podcast. So,
thank you. Well, I only know a sliver of what you're saying, I'm paying my family back too for a couple of years of leadership during COVID. So I totally know what you mean. And, I think doing the job that we all do in EMS or for David Fire, it gives you a perspective on your life that you can't take any moment for granted. So
Right.
I don't know if that's something you also feel, but I feel that fully. And so for me, it gave me perspective as to what's really important and what needs to come first. And, they put themselves aside to let us chase a dream. Right. So I totally understand wanting to pay back at this point because I'm doing that too.
If you're living with stomach pain and struggling to lose weight, I can empathize because for the first half of my life, I did as well. But I found the science-based strategy that helped me lose and keep 80 pounds off, and it's what I have right here. My team and I created the Balance Box as a way for you to achieve balance, holistic health, and give back to others all at the same time. So that science-based strategy I mentioned, super simple. Balance the pH of your body for maximum nutrient absorption. Balance your gut-brain connection. Get good sleep every night and feel a sense of purpose. It is scientifically proven that when we feel a sense of purpose, we have less cortisol pumping through our veins and it improves our mental wellness. So that's what the box does. What's inside? You get a bottle of our supplement ENS, that's our plant-based digestive formula, a pH test kit that's good for 1,000 tests, REM sleep from our partner Healthy Cell, and the best part about this box is a portion of every fee goes to our growing mission, the Influencers of Kindness, which you are now a part of. You are helping us feed and clothe our homeless veterans and brothers and sisters. So check us out online at thebalancebox.lifestyle. You can try us risk-free. We will honor a full refund in 45 days if you're not happy. And join us at the lifestyle movement that's changing the world.
I want to switch gears a little and nerd out with my EMS side. So if you'll indulge me, could you talk about one of your particularly challenging incidents that you managed while Chief?
There's so many. There's so many. I will
there
just
have to be in New York.
Yeah, I will just caveat that I didn't manage any of those alone. Right, like it is a collective approach to taking care of people. So, I may have had the fortunate, luck to be at the top spot, but nothing I did was solely myself. It was a team of people who came together to really get this job done. Obviously, there are the ones that are most visible. There are things like 9/11. I wasn't managing it, however, I responded to it. So we kind of managed ourselves at that moment. COVID, I did manage COVID, which was absolutely incredible. It was the craziest thing I had ever seen. But there were other things that really stood out. There was a horrific fire in the Bronx. I don't know if you remember, 17 people had perished. They were primarily members of the same family. We had over 60 patients come out of that fire. The heroism that went on, the work, I got to tell you, of the 60 plus people, I don't remember the final number. It was somewhere in the 60s, I believe. Of those patients that came out, unfortunately, 17 had passed. But there were almost twice as many that came out in cardiac arrest. So the paramedics and the EMTs and the firefighters did such an extraordinary job that they saved numerous lives with the work that they do. And I mean, this was like, people were lined up on it. We had to line them up as they were coming out. There was CPR being done everywhere. Hydroxycobalamin being issued, delivered everywhere. People being transported. It was a hard block to get into. There was a lot of apparatus. So, getting the stretchers with our patients down to the ambulances so they could be transported, very challenging. But I have never seen that level of dedication like I did in that moment. Like that was one of the, I hate to say it, but that's one of the smaller events that really kind of stood out to me. And then we had, the bigger events. I mean, we had a moment where a plane was in a Hudson and people were standing on the wings, like, not something you see every day, but definitely remind you that there is good in the world, because that could have been terrible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, those types of, and I call them jobs. I don't know, all the way around the country, they call them different things, runs and calls. And I refer to them as jobs. So, that type of job is one of the things that really kind of stick out in my head.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing about that. And well, I can picture what that, in my mind, what that might have looked like, just because I've looked at a lot of pictures of large scale incidents in the city. But just probably the percentages of what you're describing with that many cardiac arrest saves simultaneously, that might be like a world record there. I've never heard of anything on that scale.
Yeah, so. It was incredible. It was incredible, and there was a lot of them were children. It was hard. That was a hard job for the first responders, because it was constant. It's like, and that's the thing about our job, right? Like, one moment you're eating a cheeseburger and it's probably the best cheeseburger of your life, or you're having a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich and you're really getting into it, and then the next thing you have 30 people coming out of a building in cardiac arrest. That's the type of movement that we're expected to be okay with, which is why I say it's important that we recognize that the people who save your lives, the people who put everything on the line for you, for the average person, are also people, and they need you. They need your help. They need your support. They need your recognition. And it doesn't hurt every now and again to say thank you, right? Because it's a thankless job, right? It's not you're not showing up to a party. Nobody's there to thank you. You just got to do what you have to do, and then you move on.
Absolutely. I wanted to kind of shift a little bit into the COVID period of time, because if there was ever a period of time when EMS was responding and we were almost like isolated from the patients and the families because of the precautions we had to take and the gear we had to wear, and also just the nature of the transports, people who possibly weren't going to be coming back. Can you talk a little bit about the operations, your training and response during that time, and how did you implement the systems and resources to get through it?
It was absolutely insane. There was no other way to really explain this thing, except for we kind of saw things were ramping up. We were watching the other countries. I don't know if you remember, like Spain and Italy, they were really having some problems, and it was earlier. It was like around December, November, December of the previous year, and in December we started assisting at the airports and doing medical monitoring of people coming from certain areas of the world. And we knew, you just kind of knew something was coming, but what it was, we weren't 100% sure. It's that, nobody really had their finger on a pulse of what this was and how to treat it, right? We just knew that in the other countries, people were really suffering. There was a lot of death and a lot of stuff going on. So first of all, I took the 4-star position in May of 2019. So less than a year later, we had a world-changing, worldwide pandemic that basically shut the entire world down, including all our supplies and everything shut down. So had they mentioned that, I might have made a different choice, but I wouldn't have. I would have taken it anyway. So now this starts to ramp up, and we start to think operationally, okay, what do we need to do? We did have, despite some of the reporting that you heard, the fire department actually did have a decent amount of PPE. So we were in better shape than most. We were even better shape than a lot of the hospitals. But so we started to make sure that was coming together. I had ordered 100 additional ambulances, because if I had to ramp up, where was I putting everybody? Even if I had to, right? If you have to surge you need the capacity to surge, not just the people. You
Right.
need actually the equipment. You need ambulances and equipment. And
Where do you get
all that
100
stuff.
ambulances from? Like,
So being the fire department, we, and the first to have to go through this, like this thing was, we hadn't even gone through it yet. We just knew it was coming, and New York is always the recipient of all that is crazy, right? So we kind of got a good jump on that, and we ordered it from all the suppliers around the country, like any ambulance they had on the shelf. So we actually end up getting about 100 additional vehicles shipped to us, and right around the time that we needed to surge, they were arriving. So that was helpful.
Wow.
Another thing we did early, which I think was extremely helpful, was, we ordered mutual aid, which is not something New York City does very often. But we ordered federal resources, right? So we got, again, 200 ambulances, from all around the country with crews and equipment coming into New York City. Now, because it takes a while to actually get that up and running, and we ordered it early, they actually arrived on the day where things exploded. Wow. So we were like, hey, how are you? All right, get out there, right? Like get out there, because we were holding, and I mean holding meaning we hadn't responded to, was on our board.
Yeah,
over 1,000 jobs, So now we have all these crews, these ambulances coming into New York. Nobody knows New York, right? They're coming from all over the country. Different equipment, different protocols, different things. How do I even dispatch them in a city? How do I know where they are? How do I put them into our system? How do we get that? So we're figuring that out. And we had one of our incredible people from our IT department create a program that hooked their phones that they came with. They came with cell phones that were issued. Mm-hmm. They hooked that into our dispatch so that we can see them on our board, and we had GPS on them. So virtually turned them into a mobile CAD system on their phones. Mm-hmm. So we now all of a sudden they were on our boards. We could dispatch them. We know where they are. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of, oh no, we need to fix this. We need to fix that. One of the most challenging things during COVID for me as the leader of this mess on the EMS side was the inability to communicate quick enough to the field personnel. At that point, our first responders, our EMS people, did not have cell phones issued to them. So the only way that I could communicate an order, which was changing by the second, there was like stacks. I would put out orders on paper. Like it would have to go on paper and get sent, fax or whatever, email to the stations. The stations had like wallpaper full of orders that I was sending out, and I would send one order out, and the WHO and they would change their minds, and and I would have to send another order out, and so it got a little confusing for the first responders. And I think on top of the stuff they were seeing, which was lots and lots of death, multiple deaths within families, the fact that my orders were coming out so quickly and they couldn't keep up with them was a little frustrating for the first responders. But then there came the, how do we keep first responders isolated? And we try to figure that out. And I did something, with our scheduling that should have helped. It didn't. It made things worse. So we undid it. It was a lot of that. Like, let's try this. I've never had to keep a first responder crew like separate because they were also getting sick. Yeah. I had a third of my workforce out with COVID. So, it was like call volume going up, the absentee going up because everybody was sick. And, we normally do around 4,000, 4,100 jobs a day in a 24-hour period. We hit over 6,500 on one single day. So it almost doubled our call volume. So it was a very challenging time. And obviously people had, feelings about what could have been done and what should have been done. And, it's always easier to figure that out when you're not the one actually doing it. But, there was a lot of stress on our first responders. But the one thing I would tell you is they kept coming back. They kept coming back. They were doubles. They had, they had mask, imprints, imprints, acne, they just kept coming back. One other thing I'll mention just from that was interesting was I didn't know and I didn't anticipate that, of our workforce, which is huge, over 4,000, that the majority of them would not want to go home. So they were sleeping in their cars. They didn't want to bring this illness back to their house. So we also had to figure out how to house them. So, being that the hotels were virtually shut down, we were able to make agreements with the hotels in New York City to house the first responders so that they can have a place to sleep and have a shower and, have some food and, stuff like that. So lots of things that we never had to deal with before that we had to figure out how to deal with. Some went really well, some went okay, some were terrible, and we had to, go back. But everybody got through it. And I got to tell you, again, I was just so impressed and grateful to be a part of this extraordinary group and a once-in-a-lifetime experience for all of them, hopefully once in a lifetime.
Wow, what a testament to resilience, you as a leader and to the all the people that showed up on mutual aid and the people in the department that were working as part of the department. You answered my question, but I did want to find out, how did you deal with the dynamically fluid, changing information that we were receiving on a daily basis, more than once a day sometimes on, protocols, PPE, isolation. It sounds like, it's a moving target, right? But you had to keep everybody up to speed and keep everybody feeling like, you were looking out for them and giving them the best information available at that point in time.
Yeah, again, it took a lot of work from a lot of people. And what we end up doing is having a target time each day, a target time to release the orders and try to consolidate them, because we got it that it was just too much. And we got it also because myself, as well as the commissioner and the fire ops chief, were all going around to the station. We were out there doing station visits and talking to people and making sure everybody was okay. And this was a 24-hour operation. This was not something you went home and wake me up tomorrow. This was like, once it started, you didn't know how long this thing was going to go for. But we end up trying to consolidate as much as we could. And then, we had one target time during the day that if anything came out, this was going to be released. If anything came out after that, it was waiting until tomorrow unless it was critical. And to be honest, there were so many organizations making these rules and changes that nothing was really critical, and what we started to see is by the time we were getting it ready to go out, somebody else had already said, that's not critical, that we're not doing that, we're doing something else, Yeah. So I think that helped us by trying to consolidate. The other thing we were able to do, which I think, in the long run, like out of every great tragedy is, progress, we were able to get all our EMS members issued cell phones. So and emails. So at that point, if we had to, get something out, we could go directly, could go directly to them, which was the idea. Like, let's just put it in their hands. We need to bypass the entire rank structure and get it all out at once. Because honestly, with that call volume, they're not back at their stations till the end of their shift. No, they're running all day long. Yeah. Or if they're going back to clean up or restock, they're not looking for orders in the middle of the day. So we were able to kind of just try to streamline things as it went. But March was the worst, and then April started to kind of ease up a little, and then it was around for quite some time. I mean, standing in the middle of 42nd Street, nobody out there, nobody, no car, no anything. No it's traffic. Very, very eerie. Very reminded me very much of 9/11, how it was back then. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, just one empath to another, how did you handle that 24/7 worry about your own people? Because I experienced that on a much, much smaller scale than you, but I wondered, how did you handle that part of it, knowing that all of your decisions impact all of your people and what could happen to them. How'd you handle that stress?
I mean, it was very difficult. I relied heavily on the people around me, so I can, get these things off the table so that I can, move on to the next. The other thing is that because the communication was a little, challenging, you start to get these like groundswells of, management doesn't care about us. Management is trying to kill us. Management doesn't, and that is so not the case. I'm crying at night. Like, these people are out there. Like, I just need them to be okay. But also I need New York to know that we're there for them. So, it's this very challenging balance of caring for my own people and wanting to put them in the protection of my own arms and just say, you stay here, I got this, but knowing I can't, and knowing that the only thing I can do is send them into the danger, because the people in New York City are relying on us right now. And this is what we're trained for. This is what it's about. We're on the front lines of the worst thing that we'll ever see in our lifetimes. And I have to send you out there. So my job is to prepare them as best as I can. Make sure that, like, we were able to get them all issued respirators so that they didn't have to rely on the N95s, the half-face respirators. We got them goggles. We got them. We made sure they had PPE. We were getting food to them. Like, we got them housing. Like anything that we could do to support their efforts, because the job is being done by them, not me. I may be the one coordinating or doing that type stuff with my team, but the job itself, the responding to the same family and not allowing them to leave, with their loved ones, are being done by these people that are out there, and they're seeing this over and over. And, it was a very tragic situation. I think emotionally we're going to see the effects of COVID for years to come.
I agree.
Yeah.
We've talked about the sort of moral injury aspect of that, and I did want to just put the spotlight on what I think you did during this COVID period of time as a leader, and I think it was really exemplifying the best kind of leadership, where you were not only looking out for the public but also looking out for your people, and that's what we find the best leaders are able to take care of both of those groups, which are obviously critically important. So I want to just give you kudos for what you've done in an amazing career.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, as we wrap up, and I wish we could keep going, maybe we'll have to circle back sometime. Just share with us where people can find you, any projects you may be working on, and anything else you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, I'm not in a lot of places. I think I got that from, being the chief. You can't be that, out there on social media. So I don't have any of that stuff. I do have LinkedIn, Lillian Bonsignore at LinkedIn. Okay. There's not a ton on there because, I'm retired now. You don't want to hear about my grocery shopping, but, I am also a senior advisor for Cambridge Consulting Group. So I'm doing a little consulting with them. We're doing some, I do a couple of conferences here and there. But like I said, most of my time is spent with my family, and I'm enjoying that. As much time as I have left is the time I want to be able to spend with them. So that's my primary mission. And then as things come up, I'll take them as they go. But LinkedIn is probably the only place you're going to find me. And again, it's not all that exciting. But I want to thank you for this opportunity to come out and talk to everybody. It's been an incredible, conversation with you guys. And I just really, really respect what you're doing to try to get that message out there. And, just love your first responders. They need you. They're people. And without them, where would you be? You think about a first responder, like an impact that a first responder has. EMS, I talk about EMS, it's all first responders, but EMS has this special bond of being intimate with your personal, like, medical issues. Yeah. But, they come across a person, they're able to save a life or prevent death, which to me is saving a life, right? That impacts that person and their family members and the generation of their family members and their friends. Like, it's like a pebble in a pond, right? And so that one person, that one interaction, that one moment in time can live on for generations And that, to me, there's nothing better than that. So I just want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, you guys and all the first responders, particularly our EMS family members out there, doing an extraordinary job.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you, and I'll be asking David to reach out for part 2 because there's so many questions we also wanted to ask about other aspects of leadership, but I think everyone will really enjoy how vulnerable you were here today, and we're really grateful for that. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I look forward to part 2. I'm a little chatty sometimes, but I definitely look forward to part 2. And thank you guys. Keep up the great work. Seriously, you're touching people, and you're doing it in the best way. So thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Absolutely.
We invite you to like and subscribe YouTube, Responder Resilience, Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and Responder TV, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and go to our website, respondertv.com, for past episodes and guest information. Till the next time, stay safe, be kind to yourself. Take care.